Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Doctor. Tonight it will be fitness and functional medicine. Excellent topic. Get ready to take lots of notes, and don't forget to type your questions in the chat so we can take care of you at the end. We are very lucky to have an amazing teacher, coach, and mentor with us. He teaches, trains, and lectures doctors all over the world, has done over 10,000 hours of that, and has many years of clinical practice. Great family man, friend, and mentor, the amazing Dr. Bob Rakowski.
All right. Well, Carol, thank you always for your beautiful friendship, the beautiful introduction, for monitoring the chat and the waiting area. This is absolutely one of my favorite topics. So if we take a look at the title, fitness is essentially the ability to perform physical activities, athletic activities we could throw in there. And I've got a pretty good background in terms of helping people enhance their athleticism and, in fact, their longevity within their careers. When we start looking at functional medicine, Dr. David Perlmutter possibly has the best definition there. He says it's the opposite of dysfunctional medicine, medicine which gives a substance to suppress a symptom of sorts and ultimately, doesn't really serve the body well. But we want to create strategies that move the body forward in a healthy, healing, wonderful way. Over the course of this week, next week, we like questions to come in. And this week, we actually had a bunch of them that came in, and some may not really seem to relate to functional medicine, but I certainly will apply it. So first question was, what are you looking for in your athletes in terms of different biomarkers? What can you measure to actually find out if they're fit and healthy, et cetera? Then what about fitness versus health? Are they one and the same? And you know what? They're absolutely not the same. And there are some fit, sick people. It's hard to be really healthy if you're not fit as well. But there's varying degrees there. You certainly want to be fit enough to do the things that you enjoy. You don't want to train only for aesthetics. You want to train for, in my opinion, health first. But there are some people that will train just for the look. And sometimes those consequences are really, really bad. What about the energy systems of the body? How do we train them? How do we make them better? Interestingly enough, someone asked, what about improving self-image and self-love? That might be the real pandemic. People don't have enough self-love, and that could get us into a lot of trouble. So I'll offer my take on that. I will certainly say that, I think if I could solve that problem, it'd be a much better world. What about regular structural tune-ups? What about energy drinks and protein drinks? What about diet guidelines? I'm going to give that for not just athletes, but everybody. What about this concept of working in versus working out? Paul Chek basically coined that term as far as I know. And then finally, what about reishi, also known as Ganoderma, also known as Ling Chi? Those are the 10 questions that came in. But as I go through those, hopefully you get some tips, things that you can apply, but also if you have questions, put them in the chat. So this is from I believe, the International Journal of Sports Nutrition, and they were talking about very specifically what to look for in individuals. So the first thing they said was nutrition and metabolic health. If you don't have good nutrition status, it's hard to be healthy. What about metabolism? If that's not good, you might not get the most out of your foods. You might not burn fat very effectively. Your energy systems might be compromised. What about hydration? Well, some might say that oxygen's the number one nutrient, water's the number two. And sadly, there are plenty of people that are dehydrated. What about muscle status? Well, as a kinesiologist, I'll tell you what, I test muscles all over the body. And I want to make sure that they not only function, but functionally optimally in a balanced fashion, because muscle imbalance is just an injury waiting to happen. How do you assess endurance? There's actually something called the maximum aerobic function test. I'll mention that here. But quite simply, you determine a very target heart rate for you. And a very simple formula is 100 minus your age. And that would be your maximum aerobic heart rate, and subtract 10 from that to determine your zone. So let's say you're a 40-year-old individual, 180 minus 40 is 140. Your maximum aerobic heart zone is 130 to 140. And interestingly enough, it's easy now to track our heart rate, whether we're talking about a Fitbit or some type of Apple Watch. but then go ahead and cover a mile in your target zone and see how long it takes. And I think you might be very surprised to realize that it's probably a lot longer than you know, but that's a very good range to build your endurance capacity. Injury status and risk, that's really related to everything, including hydration status, mental status, nutrition, metabolism, muscle balance, et cetera. And then finally, inflammation, that's what it called out. And we want to get those type of markers on our athletes and even more. And what is fairly unique about how I assess athletes is I also look at their acid alkaline balance. And I've been looking at that for nearly 30 years, looking at blood, saliva, and urine. And there's very good reason for that for health and performance. But if we look at an alkaline diet, it's known to improve bone density. Now, that might not be very obvious to a lot of people, but calcium is an antacid. If your body becomes too acid, the bones can actually release calcium, demineralize, bones can thin out just to buffer the acidity in the body. It also improves muscle mass. It protects from chronic illnesses, even acute illnesses. It's even a very powerful preventive of cancer and improves our body's ability to get rid of toxins. So we want to have an alkaline diet and an alkalized being. This is a speed graph of an elite sprinter. And what I'll tell you is by the time people get to 60 meters, they start releasing lactic acid, and that actually slows down their efficiency. So Tyson Gay, I've got the video of that. I've played it a few times. In fact, maybe I'll even bring it up again. But he beat Usain Bolt straight up in the 100 meters. And, you know, that happened after we put him on a really good program to alkalize his system very, very, very powerfully. And this article here says that basically, you know what, it can take a lot more hormones to get the response that you're looking for from your tissue if you don't have the right pH. So that could be thyroid hormone, insulin, growth hormone, the sex steroids, etc. Another thing I look for is essentially the response of the autonomic nervous system in people lying to standing. And it's very simple as measuring blood pressure lying to standing. And when I have a sprinter like Tyson Gay or the other elites that I've worked with, we want their pressure to rise from lying to standing. Everybody should. But we want theirs even to rise more than typical. So when you're lying flat, your heart does not have to pump against gravity to get blood to your brain. But when you stand up, you have to raise that 6 to 10 points. And I'm surprised at how many elites even have that drop. But when we put them on the right structural balance program, nutrition program, we can change that pretty quick. And those are the two things we did for Tyson Gay, got him faster off the line and more alkaline after 60. So after 60 meters, that is. So what's the difference between health and fitness? Well, again, fitness is your physical ability to do certain tasks, but you want to be healthy. And we can look at athletes that were profoundly fit, but died young because they didn't take care of health. Maybe they used performance enhancing drugs. Maybe they developed a cardiac problem. There was a survey, and I need to find it because I've quoted it for years, but they took people that were competing in the Olympics and they asked them this question, if you could take a drug that would guarantee that you'd win an Olympic gold medal, but if there was a 50% chance that that drug would kill you, how many of you would take that drug? And way too many of them said yes. In memory, it was something around 80%. So, think about that. Why in the world would you put such a high value on an award and an accomplishment and sacrifice your health for it? And that might come to the self-love statement. But when we start looking at health versus fitness, notice that fitness is going to be about performance and winning and appearance and, other things. But when we start looking at health, better aging, longevity, quality of life, lower stress, lower blood pressure, and the pressure of athletics can disrupt both those things. But here's where they cross over. You can lose weight, improve strength, improve cardiovascular function. And that's good crossover for both health and fitness. Tom Brady's coming back again for another season. I think he's 43 or something like that. But notice what it says. And I just copy and pasted this right from an article about Tom. Brady keeps his body in tip-top shape. He's managed to do this with a variety of training and dietary techniques. His carefully constructed diet consists of 80% vegetables. That's right for him and his sport. Wouldn't necessarily be right for every athlete. He doesn't lift heavy weights, but instead trains for flexibility. And you know what? The first thing we lose with age is flexibility. The last thing we lose is strength. So he seems to have something going on there. And guess what? He goes to sleep every night at 8:30. You know, I'm going to say at least 300 days a year, I'm in bed by 8:30. It's my number one self-care habit. I would encourage you to find out what works for you, but timeless wisdom, early to bed, early to rise, certainly made Brady healthy, wealthy, and wise. Now, when we start looking at things like anabolic process and really training only for looks, what we're going to find out is there's a number of things that promote muscle synthesis. And this is a very technical diagram, but here's what I'm going to tell you. Growth hormone, IGF-1, insulin type growth factor 1, which happens to be the liver's activation of growth hormone, testosterone, amino acids, and especially branched chain amino acids, and insulin all promote muscle synthesis. And notice that insulin also prevents muscle breakdown, as does insulin type growth factor 1. Cortisol, the chronic stress hormone, prevents muscle production, and it increases muscle breakdown. So we certainly want to minimize cortisol, and we certainly want to be smart about insulin. And you know what? I've seen plenty of people that used insulin for bodybuilding. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Insulin can cause really, really big problems if people inject it. I've got an individual now, former bodybuilder. He's now diabetic because he used insulin for its growth purposes, and it didn't work out well for his body. It actually caused a reaction on his pancreas and damaged him. And so insulin should be a regulated medication used only when needed. And certainly, trying to build muscle with it works, but not a really good idea. So now we're into the energy systems, and there are 4 different energy systems. There's stored ATP, that's about 3 seconds. There's creatine phosphate, that's about another 3 seconds. There's what's called anaerobic glycolysis. That is going to be after those first 6 seconds. Notice that it takes 12 different biochemical steps, each that have a nutrient cofactor. And then we have fatty acid oxidation, burning fat, that happens in the mitochondria. And notice that by the time you get there, that aerobic metabolism with oxygen, your intensity drops way off. There was an article entitled, "Why Can't I Sprint Forever?" Well, the simple answer is you would pass out. But when we start talking about, power athletes, those are very short duration. Then we have variations of explosive athletes. And then we have endurance athletes. And I like to split them into major categories: the power athlete, the CrossFit athlete, and the endurance athlete. And how they nourish themselves, how they rest and recover, certainly their protein intake, all of that is going to vary according to their goals. And what I tell people is you need to train every fiber type and every energy system proportional to the demands of your sport. And probably the healthiest athletes are going to be those that are mostly CrossFit with a slant towards more endurance. So the next question was about self-love and body image. And I like to go back to Socrates. He says, "Know thyself," which, some say that's probably the hardest thing ever to do. And I'm going to transition to a Bob Proctor quote. And this, in my heart, believe to be true. I might even say I know it to be true. Here's what he says: "You are God's highest form of creation." And let us just stay right there. So if you're God's highest form of creation, think about that. How wonderful is that for you and me and all of us? But Bob Proctor also says you're a living, breathing, creative magnet. You have the ability to control and track what you want into your life. And by the way, if you think of yourself as less than ideal, well, what are you attracting? Less than ideal. But, remind yourself that you are God's highest form of creation. And maybe some will object to the word God. So let's get it more neutral. With Tom Chi, astrophysicist, with his TED Talk, "Everything's Connected, Here's How." And he says, I'm going to tell you a story of the heart, the breath, and the mind. And we go back to the Big Bang. And that's where, scientists say whatever it was, 13.8 billion years ago, there was a ball of energy. Some say it was the size of a peach. Some say the size of a golf ball. And it was, basically infinite density, infinite temperature. So maybe a golf ball that's, the heat of a billion suns. And when that exploded in that Big Bang, that was the energy that was needed to create all the elements, including iron. And here's what he said: without the Big Bang, we couldn't make iron. Without iron, we couldn't have hemoglobin. And without hemoglobin, we couldn't carry oxygen to our tissue. But when we start talking about the breath, a billion years ago, Earth did not have much oxygen in its environment at all. And so there were these little bacteria that were actually relatives of what we call cyanobacteria. And these bacteria would breathe in carbon dioxide and they would actually exhale oxygen. And I get such a kick out of Tom Chi. So he says, imagine you're one of these little organisms and you have a very short life. You're only going to be around for a few days or maybe a few weeks at most. And you're microscopic and you're having a conversation with yourself. Well, gee, what can I do? How can I make a difference in the world? But it was the collective efforts of these bacteria that created oxygen in the environment. And then finally, he talks about the palette of being and how that's ever expanding. For instance, before the invention of the piano, one could not be a concert pianist. Now he's an astrophysicist. Well, how long have those been around? Not very long. So, what we can be is forever expanding. So the next question was about regular tune-ups. And you know what? There's a testimonial from Holyfield that was a generic one, but I've got videos of Evander giving me testimonials, and he was very, very generous like that. But there's a number of elite athletes that'll tell you, you know what, with a regular tune-up, I stay more balanced, I'm better, but who's tuning you up? Well, you want to have the right person for you tuning you up. And there's a whole range of people. But what I'll tell you, if you're interested in a particular sport, maybe find a specialist that works with that type of sport. I happen to be a chiropractor, so I'm very biased towards chiropractors, kinesiologists, acupuncturists, nutritionists, because I do all four. And how did I get into all four? That's what my great mentors that worked with elites said. Bob, if you learn this, guess what? You'll be able to help a lot of people, including the elites. And I took that information to heart. Now let's talk about energy drinks. So it's energy drinks, by the way, not coffee. And there's a PubMed on this. They're actually associated with mental illness, poor sleep, and substance abuse. So many of these energy drinks are absolutely terrible. So guess what? We have an elite energy drink, and how fun that Anika McPherson is going to the World Championships, and she gave us a nice endorsement. So I'm going to play it. She made it generic. Why? Because that's nicer for the regulators. But here we go.
Oh, cool. Hello, my name is Anika McPherson, Olympic high jumper, due to God's grace. And I've been taking CXT for a while now, and I really can tell the difference. It's more than just an energy drink, it's just amino acids. But when I take it before training or competition, I really feel that mental clarity, and it just helps me perform better. So I really love CXT, and I hope you try it.
So keep it really, really simple, right? So plenty of our elites are absolutely falling in love with CXT. And I've got to tell you, I really enjoy it. Again, I think it's the best product out there. It's got organic cordyceps, organics, lion's mane. It should say organic Ganoderma lucidum because that's organic as well. Green tea, theanine, caffeine, and B12, and a spore probiotic. Super duper good for the brain and body. Next, what should we eat? These are my guidelines. Eat real food, clean food, not too much, not too often, every color, every day in a way that honors your genetics, your physiology, and your body goals, mostly plants. Now, where does this become a dynamic process? Well, you need enough protein to maintain your muscle mass. And so you ought to, as an athlete, know your performance, know your body composition, know your weight. That's going to be really important. But I'll tell you, I went to breakfast with a couple of NFL players, a couple of the elites, and one, I was absolutely amazed at how much they ate. Bacon, eggs, pancakes, butter, syrup, orange juice. I mean, they ate so much food, I couldn't believe it. And I looked at them, I said, you always eat like this? They said, well, we have to. And I said, explain that. Why do you have to? And they said, Bob, we burn 10,000 calories when we're in our 2-a-day trainings, which we're doing now. We would waste away if we didn't pack on these calories. So guess what? You know, the amount of calories that you put in matters when you're burning a ton, but quality is absolutely always super duper important. And then a little basics on nutrition. How much do you think human nutrition needs have changed over the last 100,000 years? I'm going to tell you not much, but how much has food changed? So much so that, you know, the cavemen wouldn't even recognize it. So if we start talking about the paleo pyramid, this is a picture of it. But as one of my mentors said, you know, plants don't run very fast. So maybe plants were really the base of that pyramid there. Malnutrition 2020, #1 cause of death on the planet. And so we want to dot the I's, cross the T's with nutrition. Paul Chek, absolutely phenomenal mentor, great author, great trainer, great human. You know, 25 years ago, he literally, you know, attended some of my seminars, bought all of my education materials, you know, gave me nice shout outs in some of his books. I will definitely give him a huge shout out as one of the best brains in all of training. But he talks about working in and doing different types of yoga and Tai Chi and breath work. And here's the deal. If you always work out super hard, like a lot of athletes thought they should, no pain, no gain, they're going to end up hurting themselves. Now, John Hines, one of my favorite trainers, says, if you strain to gain, you'll end in pain. So Paul Chek wants perfect form, perfect alignment, perfect mechanics, perfect breath, perfect energy. And you know what? He does a really good job working it, promoting it. Eric Higgins, a really good disciple of Paul Chek. Go check him out, reishiwarriors.com. And you can see he's got a phenomenal training system where he helps people. Finally, when we talk about Ganoderma, my favorite delivery system, by the way, is coffee or tea. I've done a number of Zooms where we show the PubMeds, where it's medically proven to enhance focus, energy, and fuel efficiency, buffers the acid within the body, modulates the inflammatory process by more than a dozen mechanisms, and enhances recovery as well. But if we're going to look at elite athletes and how well this works, Ulysses felt phenomenally better after a single cup. Manny Pacquiao, the same thing. Eliud Kipchoge broke the 2-hour marathon, and he did that consuming Ganoderma red tea. So very, very powerful. So those were the 10 questions that were submitted this week. So I will stop the screen share and maybe bring people in and see, do we have any questions about anything at all?
Yes, we do, but I think everybody's just soaking in all that information that we just got, because that was a lot of information. Look, Claudio's like, yep, yep. So the first question in the house is, are the sachets biodegradable?
No, but they're renewable. And so, you know, now at my office, we have pictures of the purses, but let me figure out if I have a picture of the purses. But we collect the sachets, the company Organo, they send them to Thailand. Got to have it somewhere. There it is. So our goal is to become a completely green company. And believe it or not, they've even instituted a green division and someone in charge of making things green. And so there's a picture. This is made from, I guess, the green tea sachets, but different families across the world, women are learning to make these wonderful purses and sell them. And what they sell that purse for, you know, they can often feed their family for a few weeks. So pretty powerful there, but renewable, but not biodegradable.
You know what? If I live to be 99, I'll never tire of the fresh information. A group of us are starting to cycle Sunday mornings, and I guess just suggestions for preparation. This way we don't hurt ourselves.
Well, let's go with Confucius. He said to go beyond may be worse than to fall short. And that's really, really true of exercise. So, safety first, make sure that you have the right safety type gear, pick a really good area to do it. I saw someone cycling on a busy road the other day and I thought, oh gosh, this guy's an accident waiting to happen. So find a good area to do it. But start slow and work up gradually. That would be the best thing I could tell you. It's been a long winter, I'm guessing, in Canada now. Our winter here in Houston, you could ride a bike every day in winter. So, if people are really into cycling, they may consider getting a trainer for at home or a stationary bike, but make sure they keep pedaling and things like that. But, ultimately we want to have good balance, make sure we're protected, ride in a group in good daylight. But when you start talking about nutrition, it's generally accepted that training on an empty stomach is going to be better for your muscles and puts your body more in a fat burning state. But so much of that is going to be intensity. And for cyclists, they have some of the highest levels of aerobic fitness, and they tend to burn fat very, very effectively because, unless they're a sprint cyclist, they're not going to do it very well. So my best response is start slow and ramp up gradually using all the ideal protective gear.
Perfect. I see you, Jeff. Just give me 1 second. Devin asks, when is the best time to consume CXT, red tea, and coffee when working out and engaging in sports?
So generally close to immediately before, just depends on how your body metabolizes. This is pretty quick energy where people feel it pretty quick. So you want your hydration status good. That might be 30 minutes before, but I'm trying to think of how far back this goes. It might go back 9 years. There's a gentleman named Stevie McCune, and at the time he set 5 Guinness Book of records because he ran 100 marathons in 100 straight days. I did his nutrition consult. He absolutely fell in love with the red tea, put it in like a Camelback so that he could drink it, with an over-the-shoulder straw while he was running. And that can be, a really good way to do it. Now, if you have a standard marathon, they have, people every mile, handing out drinks and things like that. That's a good thing. But I don't know how many of his marathons were standard. So he had to have a team and he made sure that he filled up his Camelback full of water. But understand that, let's say over the course of a race, it'd be reasonable to drink more than a gallon of water, or, I have to think about how many liters that is. It's quite a bit, probably 4 liters of water. And so you start out carrying an extra 9 pounds. So that can make a difference. But as you drink it along the way, the load gets lighter. So, but the best time is immediately before, but always stay hydrated. We had someone years ago that dropped dead 50 meters short of the finish line of the Houston Marathon. They wanted their best time, so they didn't take any time for drinking water, and they dehydrated and died. So, not very bright on that. You definitely want your water.
Okay, Jeff's got a question, and then Nick's question's a follow-up to what you were just talking about. Go ahead, Jeff.
Is there such thing as a healthy bread or pasta?
Well, sure. Yeah. One man's food is another man's poison. But so keep in mind, a whole grain could potentially be good for certain people. You want to go unrefined whole grain. And then, often a lot more people are becoming gluten conscious. Gluten is a bigger problem these days because of the extensive genetic modification of gluten. But was there a time, and can still some people eat gluten? Well, sure they can. But if it's your poison, don't do it. But, find a pasta. There can be a quinoa pasta, an amaranth pasta, a rice pasta, a spinach pasta. I tend to be a non-grain person. So there's something called spaghetti squash. And, we steam that in the oven, and it's a vegetable, but yet it has spaghetti noodle type consistency and even, shape, and it goes down really good. And you put some delicious sauce on that. And our Italian friend Claudio is loving that as well, right? And by the way, pasta in Italy, way different than pasta in North America, and somehow some way better for you. I have patients that often travel to Europe, and they ask the question, why is it that I seem to be able to eat whatever I want, bread, pasta, cereal in Europe, and here I eat it, and I'm just, I could put fat on like crazy. Hey, you're not comparing the same thing. They're very different, but it's still possible to get healthy stuff here, Jeff. You just got to go the extra mile.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's encouraging.
Perfect. So Nick's question is, I occasionally hear of a marathon or ultra marathons just dropping. Why someone in supreme condition would just drop for no apparent reason? You were just talking about one possible reason.
Are you talking about dropping or dying?
Dying, yes.
Yeah, well, when I would put up studies of the 100 Marathon Club, and I'll pull up this reference for it, but there's something called the 100 Marathon Club. And people that complete a marathon, every one of them has both biochemical and electrocardiographic evidence of heart damage. So it's a muscle that they tend to be working, very hard. And so that can be a problem, but I'm going to pull up a couple of slides and put it in this presentation and share the screen again. 100 Marathon Club. Basically, what they found is that 50% had what they call myocardial fibrosis, which is scar tissue in the heart muscle. And so the question is, well, why would that be? And one person has the damage, the other doesn't. So that's going to boil down to recovery. How recovered are these individuals? And then when we look at this, this was elite cross-country endurance skiers. The risk of developing arrhythmia increased by 37%. So what's an arrhythmia? It's an abnormal beat that could start a clotting cascade. So that would likely be the reason why they would just drop dead. But is it preventable? It absolutely is. So keep in mind, if someone has an arrhythmia and they throw a clot, which can cause a heart attack or stroke, well, our favorite superfood, Ganoderma, prevents those clots. Having the right balance of chemistry and nutrients in the body prevents those clots, also promotes cardiac recovery. But this is a case where if someone drops dead, well, they were fit, but they sure weren't healthy. They were death waiting to happen. So, we always want to have good ways of assessing where we are, what we're doing to ourselves, and making sure that we do all the right things to stay healthy.
Okay, perfect. Does eating too many eggs cause heart or cholesterol issues?
Shouldn't, but remember, one man's food's another man's poison. So, or woman in this case. And so when you look at cholesterol, we actually make over 80% of the cholesterol in our body. And cholesterol has just been a lie. It's really been a lie. It's part of every cell membrane, part of steroid hormones. It's super important. And there was a British Medical Journal article, and I had covered this in one of the Ask the Doctors, but for 92% of senior citizens, a higher level of cholesterol is actually cardioprotective. Those of us in natural medicine have been saying, what the heck? Where did they ever get this idea that cholesterol was bad? And why? Why would they poison the body's ability to make cholesterol when if someone is just eating inappropriately, for them, change their diet? So notice the title of this article from British Medical Journal: lack of an association or an inverse association between low density lipoprotein cholesterol, that's LDL cholesterol, and mortality in the elderly. So what that means is they were dead wrong about it. They studied about 68,000 elderly, and they found an inverse association, meaning the amount of people that died with higher cholesterol, when cholesterol was higher, people lived longer. That was 92% of the people. So, I think one thing that can be happening, or maybe should be happening around the world right now, is people are starting to look at things and asking legitimate questions. They're recommending this drug. First and foremost, do I need it? Second question, is it safe? Third question, is it effective? And if we go with cholesterol, do you need it? Almost never. Is it safe? Yeah, mostly for most people. Effective? Well, at what? Lowering your cholesterol, but increasing your time to the grave, with 84% of people suffering severe side effects within 2 years. So, we really should start looking at this for sure.
Okay, Janelle, you've been sitting there very patiently.
It was 95 here yesterday and today, and we're hanging in. So how often can they take the CXT, and should they just put it in water, or should they have them put it in tea?
Well, tea would add nutrition to it. I would take it however they like to take it. They can take as much as they want. The potential limit with the CXT is it has 100 milligrams of caffeine. So consider each one's like a cup of coffee. So, most people are going to have an upper limit of where coffee is really good for them and then less good. So a week ago, I did a coffee and cannabis Zoom. And as a researcher, sure, I'll look into anything. And I have to say, I was beyond surprised at where it was. But it's interesting, the synergy of coffee and cannabis goes away after your 8th cup of coffee. So if you're a 9-cup-a-day drinker, you might consider only 8 or less. But I found it fascinating that some of the articles, the title was "Coffee and Cannabis Don't Mix." And they were citing that after the 9th cup, you had a problem, which is, it's selective reading of the data. And that's ridiculous. There's synergy. It's proven. There's now amazing medical studies. And there's also, thousands of studies that cannabis is technically a health food. And literally there's wellness use of it, and I'll say medical use of it or abuse of it. We don't recommend abuse of anything. But wellness use, well, for the right person in the right concentration at the right time, proven benefits, that's for sure. So CXT and whatever they want, keep in mind 100 milligrams of caffeine per. So, whatever your caffeine tolerance is, if you're caffeine sensitive near bedtime, you might consider less of it, even though, the Ganoderma, the cordyceps, the lion's mane, the green tea, the theanine, those all can be very, very nice caffeine buffers.
Okay, next question. What protein bars and shakes do you recommend?
Well, they got to be clean, and they should be high biologic value. And so, a high biologic value protein is one which is going to help your body absorb, utilize, make good tissue, make good muscles, etc. And the top 3 are meat, egg, and milk. So can you get those in protein bars? You'd be surprised at how creative protein bars are. There are meat protein bars. There are certainly egg protein drinks, milk protein drinks, whey protein, very high biologic value. Some consider it a superfood on their own. But whatever you do, you want it as clean as possible, and you don't want junk added to it. So, someone brought in today an electrolyte drink to me and said, "Dr. Bob, is this okay?" Well, the electrolytes were okay, but they added 26 grams of sugar per serving. So, we're now getting almost like a soft drink. So that wasn't a good choice. But, if you get a good quality protein without, too much bad stuff added, is a little sugar okay? It could be. A little could be. Too much? No, probably not.
What is the difference between whole wheat and whole grain?
Grain is going to be very generic. So there's lots of grains out there: rice, oats, barley, millet. Those are all grains. But wheat is very specific. And there's, wheat has been profoundly genetically modified. So there again are a number of people that have wheat challenges because of what we've done to it.
Does Ganoderma help with fibromyalgia and joint pain?
There's actually a PubMed study that says it does both of those things. Yes. So fibromyalgia, very specific study. Joint pain, There's even studies on rheumatoid arthritis where it helped the pain of that. So yeah, there's very good documented evidence there.
Last question in the chat thus far. What do you recommend for someone to stay satiated or reduce caloric intake?
That can be a challenge. It certainly can. And so one of my biohacks are some of these really good fibers. You can buy a fiber that has like a little citrus flavor, a strawberry flavor, or a lemon flavor. And I'll take fiber because I've been doing now intermittent fasting for 2 years, and it's one of the best disciplines that I've taken on. But when I would get hungry, I would ask myself that question: how can I feel a little more satisfied so I can go through these 16 hours without food? And I would take, sometimes even a couple tablespoons of that fiber and mix it into hot water, just a few ounces. So for those of you in Canada, maybe 60 mLs. And with that hot water, it becomes gelatinous, almost like pudding. And by the way, could you actually even get a Jello that didn't have sugar? It wouldn't taste very good, but that would be filling without calories, many calories, and there's some nutritive value to that. So those are a couple of biohacks. Drink water, stay distracted. In time, one of the best ways to stay satiated is with really good overall nutrient value. And so the higher value nutrients, value foods that you eat, from the organic sources, et cetera, satiety comes along a lot nicer. So you can certainly try that.